Morning team, got a bit of just a quick ramble on our hands. Had a couple of coffees this morning and just read up on an article on Kina barrens, and I thought that this would be a good time just to have a bit of a chat about my 2 cents on what I think about what's going on, and just provide another element to the conversation that we're already having at the moment. Now, the main conversation at the moment is that we are overfishing our predatory species, namely the snapper and the crayfish, leading to an overabundance of their prey species, which is Kina, which is going through and just decimating the kelp beds. Now, I don't disagree with that, but I think there is more to the conversation than just that. And my thoughts are that we are basically seeing a change in environment, which is changing the behaviour of the Kina that are already there. And what I mean by that is we're seeing more warm water events, the temperature increasing in the water, and what I think that is potentially doing is changing the metabolic rate of these Kina, and basically during these events they need to eat more. The energy requirement goes up and they need to eat more. That coincided with potentially these events making the weed more lethargic, which makes them more susceptible to predation, and we end up with these Kina barrens. One of the reasons why I think this might be the case is that we are seeing these barrens popping up in other places other than the Hauraki Gulf. There is more to New Zealand than the Hauraki Gulf. North Island, far north as well, from Auckland up, Coromandel up, there's more to New Zealand than that. And we are seeing these Kina barrens popping up in the places like Fiordland, Nelson, Stewart Island, Chatham Islands, where the ecosystems are far more intact. Nelson, for example, has never had more snapper, or hasn't had as much snapper around that region than what we have at the moment. The fishery is absolutely booming, which is amazing. It got decimated in the past, but it's booming now. But we are seeing kelp beds disappearing in recent years, and there's never been more predatory species around. Chatham Islands as well, single events, the summer will come through and then whole kelp forest just absolutely disappear. So I think there is more to the conversation than just an imbalance of ecosystem. But I do think that that is part of the equation, 100%. To what extent, I'm not so sure. I think that Kina definitely do make up the diet of snapper as well as crayfish, but I think that it's the larger crayfish that generally predate upon these Kina. And what I think that we would see if we were seeing an explosion in this population, or those populations of these Kina should be exploding if this is the case, to be wiping out all the kelp. We should be seeing Kina in all different shapes and sizes, all the small ones that are coming through, but we're not. We're seeing a lot of the same sort of size. And the reason why we're seeing them is because the kelp isn't there. But if you poke your head under the kelp that is there, there's always Kina in and around kelp all the time. The reason why we're seeing them is because there's no kelp. The Kina are just sitting on the rocks. In an ecological sense, it doesn't make much sense for Kina to be absolutely going through and willingly hammering everything in their path, because then they're left with no food. But what I think that is happening is that once these warm weather events come through, and the kelp dies and the Kina do eat the kelp, the Kina that are remaining in these kelp beds are slowing down the re-establishment of the weed. As soon as weed tries to start growing, the Kina are just hammering it for sure. We need to be careful about the methods that are being spoken about in terms of just destroying all the Kina that are there, just getting rid of them all, because we are dealing with, as they say, with milky flesh, everything, we're dealing with a starving ecosystem. So why are we talking about decimating the little food that is left for these starving fish? Something to think about. Anyway, another thing to be wary of is the method of reproduction with Kina, and going through and destroying every Kina that we see. They are broadcast spawners. They hold onto eggs and sperm. They throw them into the water column when it's time to reproduce, and they fertilise in the water column, I think. So we've got to be careful about smashing them to pieces, because we are just putting eggs and sperm into the water column, which could equate to a little bit of the problem. That, and also Pat Swanson, absolute living legend, he mentioned something along the lines of that kina are actually quite long-lived, and when things become long-lived, reproducing is a massive exertion of energy, and when things become long-lived, snapper do the same thing as well. Reproducing exerts far too much energy, so they end up almost absorbing the gonads, or not reproducing to the same extent as what they normally do. So you end up with these, say, dormant fish and dormant kina. And when you're going through and smashing and removing all of these dormant kina that aren't contributing to future stocks, you end up creating space for more fertile kina, which can also lead to a bit of a cascading effect. So anyway, a bit of a ramble. No hate, guys. I'm just sort of adding in an extra element to the conversation. I think that potentially both apply, but yeah, I'd love to hear your 2 cents. I'd love for the conversation to carry on, yeah, I fully agree that we definitely have a problem here. These kelp forests, these kelp beds, these seaweed beds, they're such an important habitat in our ecosystems for juvenile fish, and we definitely do need to think about something. But I think the one-track conversation on all the snapper, taking too many snapper, too many crayfish, I think there's a little bit more to it than that, and I think that environmental changes are going to have just as much of an impact, if not a larger impact, further down the line, and we need to keep it front and centre and in mind. But yeah, cheers heaps for the yarn, guys. I'll see you guys out there, and yeah, let's start the conversation.